morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world, and welcome to episode 28 of the ESG show. Today, we are talking about B Corps, and we're asking the question, why? Why a B Corp? How do you do it? How a B Corp? And then what? So you've set up your B Corp, what do you do next? And we've got some wonderful guests today to talk us through the why, how, and then what. And I'll be introducing them all to you shortly. And in fact, I'm quite interested in this at a personal level because I'd quite like it, I think, if my business was a B Corp, and I don't know how to do that. But first, let me tell you about a survey we conducted, which I shall tell you about in just a second. We asked, what is your understanding of what a B Corp is? And it gives you the nature of who's watching the program today. 57% said diving in, ready to go. 29% said they're certified. 14% have heard of it, and precisely no one had not heard of it. Anyway, today we are joined by, as I say, three great guests. And first of all, I'd like to introduce you to Dawn Rennick. At least I will in just a second, if you could bear with me. Hello, Dawn. How are you today? Dawn, I think you're on. I think you're on mute, Dawn.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you beautifully now. How are you today, and where are you calling from?
Yes, I'm from Charlotte, North Carolina, and I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for this opportunity, and a warm hello to everybody tuning in from around the world.
Well, thank you, Dawn. Now, I don't want to put words into your mouth, but I think Dawn is one of my best friends because I think you're a bit of a fan of the ESG show, which automatically makes you one of my best friends, I think. Anyhow, so Dr. Dawn Rennick is the CEO of Piercing Sun Consulting, a digitized thought leader in ESG and impact consulting, specializing in B Corp advisory. Her expertise blends academic insight with practical strategies, driving sustainable and socially responsible business practices. So Dawn, your PhD, what was that in, and does that relate to what you're doing now?
Yes, my PhD is in organization and management, and it is directly related to my current work. First of all, it taught me that organizations are living organisms with a collective soul. It also provides me with a deep understanding of how organizations operate and manage change, which is a fundamental principle in guiding businesses towards sustainable and responsible practices, particularly in this realm of ESG and B Corp certification. So my academic background really underpins the approach that I take in impact consulting, and it allows me to blend academic research knowledge with over 35 years of experience in industry, implementing practical strategies for business transformations.
Okay, sounds impressive. And so, if you don't mind, I'd like to cut straight to the chase here and ask you the big question, which is, what's a B Corp?
So, Michael, a B Corp or benefit corporation is a for-profit company that has been certified by B Lab for its social and environmental performance, accountability, and transparency. So B Lab is a global nonprofit standards organization, and B Corp certification is conferred to companies that meet high standards of verified social and environmental performance, that legal accountability, and public transparency. So to achieve and maintain certification, as it stands today, companies must complete the B Impact Assessment and achieve a verified total score of 80 or more points. They also must meet that legal requirement to commit to taking all stakeholders into consideration in their governing documents and recertify every 3 years. B Corps are committed to using business as a force for good, and they aim to positively impact all stakeholders, including workers, communities, customers, and the planet. And the B Corp movement is part of a global effort to transform the economy to benefit people, communities, and planet. And as of now, there are over 6,500 B Corps globally, with hundreds of thousands of employees involved in the B Corp community.
Okay, thank you for that, Dawn. And the good news is we're bang on time. I'd like to introduce our next guest, Tracy. Hello, Tracy. How are you today?
Yeah, very good, Michael. Good afternoon. Thanks for inviting me onto the show and the opportunity really to talk about our business, the Future Business Partnership, and our B Corp journey to date. So looking forward to our discussion.
Well, it's all our pleasure. So Tracy Uggett is a co-founder and co-managing partner of Future Business Partnerships. She's an innovative European private equity impact investment firm. Fresh Business Partnership is an innovative European private equity impact investment firm focusing on empowering the transition towards environmentally friendly, low carbon, and socially positive household consumption. FBP has been awarded the highest ever B Corp score in the UK, a score of 174, a score that also places them as number one among equity investment firms globally. Amongst other approaches, the firm integrates the B impact assessment into all key phases of its investment process to ensure that investee companies have the means and can be held accountable for driving purpose and profit together, hand in hand. So, Tracy, can you tell me a little bit about Future Business Partnerships?
Yeah, we'd love to do that. So Future Business Partnership is a new private equity impact investment fund. We're new. We've been around about 3 years, our team, and we are on a mission, as you just mentioned, to drive the transition to more sustainable, low carbon and socially positive household consumption. We are a team of consumer specialists. We have a 20-year track record of building success in the consumer sector, but having grown up in the sector, we are acutely aware of the extent of the damage that has been caused really by selling people more stuff that they don't need. So 65% of global carbon footprint is from unsustainable household consumption. And that's when you consider upstream and downstream, up the supply chain and downstream into redistribution. So our team came together 3 years ago, 2020, to try and solve that problem. And what we do is we only back authentically mission-driven businesses to drive that transition to sustainable, low carbon and socially positive household consumption, as I just mentioned. And we're happy to play all the way up the value chain, the consumer value chain. So it could be a brand, it could be a manufacturer of components for a brand, it could be a redistribution business of surplus. But as long as it has 5 million or more of revenue and is profitable, we are interested. We know how to scale businesses, but we only want to scale impactful businesses. And we're out to prove that a hands-on investor, we can help to make money by doing good, by backing impactful brands and businesses, and that we can drive profit and purpose together, as you mentioned, hand in hand. So I hope that's helpful to set the scene about us.
That is indeed, Tracy.
And we're different.
And I'm very impressed that you managed to achieve such a high B Corp score. And who better qualified than you to answer my next question? So Dawn has told us what a B Corp is. My question to you is why? Why a B Corp?
Yeah. Well, for us, this was really simple. B Corp in our sector, consumer sector in particular, is widely recognized as an ethical certification for responsible business practice and good business ethics. And it was really simple for us as an investor. We want to only back those impactful brands, authentically focused, mission-driven, focused on driving change. And we knew as an investor, as a potential partner to these businesses, we needed to be recognizable by them. We needed to be reputationally compatible with them. So we need to be ethically certified. So we designed ourselves in the image of the businesses that we want to partner with. And B Corp was an obvious choice for us to be able to establish ourselves as an authentic, mission-driven partner. Dawn's already mentioned it. It's externally verified certification, and therefore we could be immediately recognizable as part of the tribe and certified independently as ethical. One thing that differentiates us in our market, and we're very proud of, but we are quite unique in this aspect, is we link 100% of our financial incentives to being able to demonstrate social and environmental progress, return, the purpose part alongside the profit, if you like. And we want to be held accountable transparently, and B Corp enables this for us because we use the B Corp scorecard that Dawn was just mentioning to measure the progress in our businesses on social and environmental credentials. It's independently verified, it's ungameable. We can't be accused of marking our own homework, and we can hold our businesses accountable for doing and delivering exactly what I said we wanted to do, which is profit and purpose hand in hand. So these are two really important and deeply personal reasons for us why B Corp it was a natural choice for us to establish our ethics and our mission as an investor and as a potential partner.
Okay, thank you, Tracy. And I'm looking forward to learning more about your B Corp journey and how FPP has been awarded the highest ever B Corp score in the UK. So I look forward to talking to you again shortly. Also on the show today is Nada Shirley. Hello, Nada.
Hi, Michael. Hi, lovely to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's great to have you. So Nada is the co-founder of Willful Group. She has worked in public relations for nearly 3 decades as an agency founder, building and protecting reputations for business brands, NGOs, and governments. As a proud early adopter and trend spotter, one of her memorable career highlights was driving her tiny electric G-Whiz through the gates of Buckingham Palace to receive the Queen's Award for International Enterprise in 2014. So congratulations for that. For sustainability and ESG, sustainability and ESG have been major themes for the last 15 years, particularly in growth investing, digital innovation, and international development. And Willful was formed to support clients changing the world for the better. A B Corp since 2017 through Willful Group company, Gone Communications, and she's also a B Corp ambassador. So Nada, that must have been quite the moment, receiving that award at Buckingham Palace. How did that feel?
It was very special, as you can imagine, meeting Her Majesty the late Queen and also Prince Philip, who is quite the character. I think the thing about the Queen's Awards is that you're really only supposed to talk about them if you've had them for 5 years or less. So I think we really need to go and get another one. And I think the one to get at the minute now, we've got our current, environmental champion of a king on the throne is probably to try and go for the Sustainable Development Award. But, just to give them a little plug, not that we work for them, but I think in this world of many, many awards, it's a good one to support because, like the B Corp certification, you can't game it. You can't pay to enter it. And they, in theory, only give it away to people who truly deserve it. So it's a good one to have.
Okay, excellent. Well, so tell us, what's a B Corp ambassador, and where's your embassy then?
Yeah, yes. Well, it's a virtual embassy, and it serves only ethical chocolates, no Ferrero Rocher. So I'd be serving something like a Tony's Chocolonely or a Divine, which has been ethically sourced and B Corp certified in my ambassador role. But in all seriousness, being a B Corp ambassador is not as grand as it sounds. It's, there's a cohort of founders of B Corp companies and CEOs of B Corp companies who were asked by the movement quite early on, would we get out there and talk about the B Corp movement and advocate for it, as often as we possibly could. And of course, if you're in the movement, you're fairly passionate about it. I think that goes without saying. And so it's a privilege to just do things like this, to blog, to broadcast, just really to advocate. And sometimes that's, as effective in a one-to-one situation, because quite often people, just want to ask a few questions rather than, listen to a whole kind of big explanation about what it is. But the objective is very much to try and grow the movement.
Okay, thank you for that, Nigel. I'm slightly devastated that you don't have an embassy, because I was looking forward to the reception and eating copious amounts of Ferrero Rocher, but I'm sure I will recover from that eventually. I want to ask you a question about B Corps as well. So we've asked the question, what is it? Well, why it's a good idea. So you set up your B Corp. What do you do next? Can you talk us through that?
Yeah, I can, both from a kind of, I suppose, personal experience of running a B Corp, but also professionally, because, we do comms and we do a lot of stakeholder engagement work. And I think a common, I won't necessarily say it's a challenge, but it's certainly a common initiative amongst certified B Corps. Once all the champagne dies down and the bunting is back in its box because you've had a wonderful moment of celebration getting over the line, and it is a hard thing to do. Then the next challenge really is to keep improving, because the fundamental ethos of the movement is continuous improvement. It isn't a one-time certification that you can then just sit back and kind of relax. At the moment, it's something you have to do every 3 years. You have to recertify. So really getting everybody in your business enrolled and engaged in the movement is super important, because you need everybody's help, and you need to give everybody permission to think of ways that you can improve your score. So that engagement piece, that communication piece is super important. I mean, I would say that naturally, but it is borne out by conversations I've had with lots of other people in the movement, and there are lots of kind of free tools and assets out there to help certified B Corps to do exactly that.
Okay, well, thank you for that, Nata. That was great. I'd like to welcome back our other two guests at this point, and before we start getting into the nitty-gritty of it all, I just wanted to ask you a few questions, and just for a moment, I want to play a little bit of to be devil's advocate for a few moments and ask a naughty question, which is, isn't it all a bit woke? Isn't the whole concept of being a B Corp woke? Nada, any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I'm really glad you asked that question, actually, because it is the elephant in the room. The whole ESG movement, and really I should let Tracy speak about this because it's in her wheelhouse as an investor, but it's been massively hijacked and politicized. And I think the fundamental issue that we have to kind of keep firmly in our sights is that B Corps are a for-profit movement. You can't be a B Corp if you're a charity or an NGO. This is about capitalism, but it's about a much more responsible, ethical way of doing business. And there's a subtext in the woke movement, which is that how could you possibly pursue a profitable enterprise if you are doing the right thing, if you're looking after the people and the planet and the environment? But actually, I think we've crossed that threshold now, and there's endless studies that can be referred to that will prove that actually, because we need to do business sustainably, we only have one planet. It's actually more counterproductive not to care for the planet and for societal equality these days than than to kind of slap a big woke label on it and back away from it in preference to maximising shareholder profits, which we've seen time and time again in the news, examples of companies who really only pursue profits and they come unstuck. Those risks will trip them up. So I'm sure that's something that the other two guests will add to at length. But yeah, that's my take on it at least.
Okay, thank you for that. No, I don't. I'll give Dawn and Trace the opportunity to come in on that point in just a moment, but I wanted to just ask you each another question first. And so, Tracy, can you just drill into this idea that how much time commitment is required? I beg your pardon. I beg your pardon. I'm so sorry. If you're a B Corp, won't you make less money?
Yeah, we actually believe quite the contrary. We believe the purpose is driving profit. I mean, I can talk really very much about kind of our sector again, but we take great inspiration from some of the original trailblazing, purpose-driven brands, campaigning brands, Patagonia, Body Shop, these brands that really proved the model. That by a focus on people and planet, you can drive profitable growth. These are billion-dollar companies, B Corps, who've driven sales growth and profitable growth and really been able to demonstrate they were able to establish themselves by taking share in the market. And today there is this really warm wind at the back of brands that are attempting to do the same thing, benefiting from really a permanent structural shift towards eco-consumption as consumers more and more become aware of climate change and have the benefit of more information on the subject. So while there's certainly an upfront investment of time throughout the organization and money to obtain a B Corp certification, there's, in our opinion, there's great medium to long-term payback. I mean, I think B Labs has publicized information that it has been collating, certainly over the last 3 years, that B Corps are growing faster than traditional businesses. It calls them traditional businesses. I'll call them non-B Corps. That they have lower rates of employee churn, higher rates of innovation. These are really fundamental business drivers, and they have more success in securing equity finance. It tells you where the market is moving. And I have to say, from our personal experience in the businesses that we back and look at, purpose-driven businesses punch way above their weight in attracting and retaining top talent. This is, in our opinion, one of the key value drivers in a company. And we also see much stronger customer loyalty, and this is through thick and thin. And we've had in the consumer sector lots of thick and thin at the moment, and that means that you require much less investment to not only acquire but retain your customers. This goes to the bottom line. So and again, it underpins my previous point on a payback for the investment into obtaining this type of certification. So we feel that actually mission-driven businesses perform at a different level, that purpose drives profit and value. So by definition, really, Michael, in answering your question, we feel that purpose-driven businesses are driving better financial outcomes over the long term. Responsible businesses are more resilient and are taking share, and this for certain for us means that we could make more money, not less.
Okay, so the economist Milton Friedman famously once said the social responsibility of a business is to make a profit. So presumably, if Milton Friedman was alive today, he'd be saying, form a B Corp. Okay, so but if you're a small business, isn't it just a lot of hassle? I mean, how much time commitment is required to run a B Corp?
Maybe I jump in there again. I mean, I think there's no question that at any size and scale, the original certification process, even the recertification, Nada just mentioned it every 3 years, is onerous from a point of view of not only understanding what's required in terms of the certification, but putting in place policies and procedures and practices. This is a great playbook on how to entrench impact within the DNA of a business, and that requires some work. So there's no question that up front there is a commitment and an investment in time and some cost to get the B Corp certification. But once it's embedded, the maintenance phase of this is less onerous. And by involving all staff, which is what Nada's also referred to, you get collective buy-in, ownership for delivering impact. Making it measurable across the organization equally means that people are all pulling in the same direction. So, this can significantly lighten the load in those incremental periods, making them far less onerous. So, there is a commitment, but there is a commitment to take that step, to think differently and behave differently. But once it's entrenched, it almost becomes an organic process of the business behaving in line with its mission and its purpose.
Okay, thank you for that. And Dawn, I wanted just your general thoughts really about, is it a bit woke, making money? But also I've got something specific for you as well, which is if you're a tiny little company, is it still practical to become a B Corp?
Yes, Michael, setting up and running a B Corp is very practical for tiny, small businesses. The B Corp certification process is, as Tracy mentioned, can be scaled to fit the smaller operations. And it really offers these organizations, like she said, a framework to really embed that social and environmental responsibility directly into their business model right from the outset. It also provides them, as she also touched on, a competitive advantage by enabling them to really differentiate themselves as a business that is committed to more than just profit. And this really appeals to the customers and employees who share these values.
Okay, thank you for that, Dawn. We're now going to turn to that part of the show when we review some recent editorial in the press, or recent-ish editorial at least. And there was this particular piece in the Financial Times, how to make green incentives pay. Green metrics for executive bonuses are on the rise, but so is skepticism. So Tracy, can you tell us what's all this about? Can you tell us a little bit more?
Yeah, so this was quite recent, a recent article in the FT, and it really came from a global alternatives conference based in Miami, where ESG was being discussed, and it starts off by just acknowledging again that the net inflows into climate-focused funds are way down, lowest level since 2019, and this is really out of the anti-ESG sentiment coming out of America. But what was interesting, I thought, was that the Willis Towers Watson prepared a report looking at, how ESG criteria was being used in executive bonus pay. So, how were the executives in companies being evaluated and remunerated off them meeting ESG metrics, and this is way up. So 3/4 of S&P 500 are using ESG metrics in bonus pay in the senior levels within organizations within that index, up from 2/3 a year before. And what you're seeing is a lot of backlash again through lack of the ability to measure. So some of the biggest fund managers are calling foul, saying it's subjective, fluffy, and easily gamed. So it's not delivering in any value. And there are some newcomers to the sector, so less traditional asset owners, but more climate focused funds that are actually saying, look, what we need to do is ramp up climate goals, and we need to link those to executive pay, because frankly, if these, being the ESG goals, are supposedly real corporate goals, and then they're not part of compensation packages, then it's really hard to say that those are really your corporate goals. So in order to have everyone pulling in the same direction, they should be linked, and the newcomers, which is where I would put us, if Future Business Partnership, are advocating more goals and more incentives linked to those goals. And you'll know I've mentioned it just briefly in passing that we do this. We quite uniquely in the private equity space, we link 100% of our financial incentives to being able to demonstrate that we've delivered social and environmental progress, and this is fundamental to the way that we stand to account, that we are happy to be held accountable for delivering against those. And B Corp scorecard, very comprehensive and Nada's mentioned it too, independently verified and ungameable. This is how we stand accountable, very transparently so. So whilst we understand and hear the challenges around the subjectivity of KPIs and measurement, this is the way that we try and solve the problem. So we're a believer in goals. We're a believer in being held accountable transparently, and we're grateful that B Corp has enabled that for us so efficiently, because that's how we feel we can really change behaviour, is by being held accountable for the promises that we make, which most fundamentally is, of course, driving purpose at the center and core of what we deliver when we deliver financial returns to our investors.
Okay,
it was interesting.
Thank you for that, Tracy. Thank you. That's great. The next piece is an article that Nada spotted about how in France, directors who fail to adhere to new CSRD requirements will be jailed. Nada, please.
Yeah, I mean, this has been,
yeah,
it's been reported in a number of publications, but GreenBiz in particular kind of popped up as being the one that we all read in the office and just kind of hooted with joy. I think because and apologies, Dawn, and to anyone from stateside who's tuned in today, but I think since Brexit, we're shamefully falling behind in the UK on our sustainability leadership. But the EU generally is much more feisty when it comes to, really wanting to demonstrate that it's taking seriously the implications for companies who fail to comply with mandatory reporting. And this CSRD, yet another acronym from sustainability, which is unfortunate, but what it stands for is the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. And the European Union have introduced it as part of the European Green Deal, and it's basically for the bigger companies to report. And what's super significant about this in comparison with other stuff that's come before is that this is the first one, I think I'm right in saying, and I'm sure Dawn will correct me if I'm wrong, that asks for some kind of double materiality reporting to be taken into consideration. So ESG, as we all know and understand it, is really about quantifying the risks to companies from climate and society. But this one actually requires companies to start to report in a kind of legal way on the impact that those companies and their operations is having on the environment and society. So it's quite a biggie, bravo to the French for actually sticking drawing a line in the sand and saying, if you don't report, if you don't comply, we will fine you and potentially also jail you. So I think that's kind of a really important I suppose signal to company directors that they've got to take this stuff seriously.
Yeah, absolutely. And can you just remind everyone the meaning of double materiality in this context?
Yeah, so that's the kind of not only the risk to the company from climate change and societal breakdown, or workers' rights, for example, which tends to be the kind of the reporting, the ESG reporting that companies pull together for their investors. So things like TCFD. This goes a step further because it requires companies to talk about the impact that they are having on the environment. So if you are a polluting company, if you are producing a lot of waste or using a lot of water, all of these things are coming through. If you're not paying fair wages, if you're undergoing a lot of strikes because of the way that or human rights in your supply chain are an issue, for example, all of these types of things are designed to come through in CSRD, which is kind of interesting for this discussion because, of course, B Corp certification also requires you to touch on these things.
Okay, thank you for that. And then Dawn, now I think this relates really to what we've been talking about here, about how management have this, it's not in a company's own interests to behave in a certain way. At least I think this is what this article is about. Dawn, it was you that spotted this piece. Boeing needs new management. Can you tell us more?
Absolutely. Yes, this article by Tom Davis does a great job of correlating the most current problems at Boeing with its 737 MAX 9 aircraft and the widespread destruction and harm caused by Jack Welch's transactional approach to management, profit at all costs, basically. Specifically, Boeing has had a line of Welch's disciples installed at its helm for many, many years. Disciples that include Harry Stonecipher, James McNerney, Dennis Muhlenberg, and now David Calhoun, who all have enjoyed extracting extreme compensation packages and perks from the company, while the company's fundamental ability to function has been severely disabled by destabilizing its workforce, preventing it from properly innovating, and ignoring quality and safety imperatives. Those, the most current incident being the door plug that blew off the Alaska airliner. But prior to that, it was the crash of the Lion Air flight off Indonesia and the crash of Ethiopian airline flight 302. So between the CEOs and Boeing's board, they all have shown egregious derelict of duty by continuing with Welch's approach to management, profit above all else. And this is just one example in one Fortune 500 company, Michael. The Jack Welch approach to management, known for its cutthroat, hyper-competitiveness, downsizing, rank and yank, deal-making, and financialization, is pervasive in corporate America today. And the American worker and our economy is really seeing the effects of the harm that it's been doing over the last 25, 30 years.
Yeah, thank you for that, Dawn. I mean, I don't want to talk about this for very long because time is pushing on, but it does remind me of a TED talk which you and I discussed the other day from Margaret Heffernan talking about super chickens and how in a chicken farm they ranked the chickens. They created all the super chickens and they separated them out with the idea that these super chickens will be the expert chicken layers, that the productivity in the farm will rise enormously because they've got these wonderful chickens that they ranked as being the stars of the egg layer. And what actually happened was that productivity on the chicken farm fell because what they found is that these super chickens, their success was at the expense of all the other chickens, and the other chickens, the ones that weren't expert egg layers, turned out that when the super chickens were kicked out, their productivity rose enormously. So it kind of reminds me about what you're saying about the whole yank and rank thing. But anyhow, I want to move on quickly from that. But before we do, any observations about that?
So, Michael, I really love this piece for a couple of reasons. First, it shows that high individual productivity does not always translate into successful group outcomes, especially in highly competitive environments where it's a win at all cost mentality. We see significant compromise occur. And with compromise, everyone loses, even if there's a perception that at the time there's a win. It's short term. I think in this experiment, we can really see how aggression comes out, harming each other, reducing overall productivity. But with the ordinary chickens that cooperated, they maintain that steady egg production. So second, that this barnyard experiment supports what we observe in human studies all the time, that collaboration and social cohesion can be more effective for group success than just focusing on that individual excellence. So it's a very, very powerful reminder of the importance of fostering cooperative and supportive environments in organizations for long-term success. And this is a foundational tenet found in B Corps and the B Corp movement.
Okay, thanks for that. Certainly, we've had a question from Gillian Force. CSRD versus B Corp certification. How do you decide? How do you prioritize? Quickly, without going into a huge amount of depth, any thoughts about that?
Well, it's a kind of it starts for companies of 250 employees and above. So it's big companies really that it's directed at initially, and I think it's something like $43 million of turnover. So it's not going to be SMEs initially who have to worry about it. So in some ways, B Corp certification, which is a voluntary thing to do, is brilliant at future-proofing high-growth companies, so that you start as you mean to go on, and you're kind of, I think it's fair to say, insulating yourself against future policy change, which might be expensive to catch up with if you're on the back foot in the future. So it's a good thing, I think, to look at the B impact assessment. You don't have to spend a penny on it, actually. It's free, as a way of just seeing, benchmarking how you're performing against all of these different criteria in your sector.
Okay, thank you for that. Incidentally, we had a comment from Peter van Kranenbroek about double materiality. So if you go to the comments, there's a link there which he says it's explained in 3 minutes. So if you take a look at the comments there, you might find that useful. Now I'm going to have a brief chat with Dawn, and it's going to have to be a fairly brief chat, I'm afraid, Dawn, but I've just got a few questions for you. Impact consulting, what is that and how does it connect to a B Corp?
Sure, absolutely. Impact consulting is a new niche within management consulting. So impact consultants play a crucial role in driving sustainable development. The International Council for Management Consulting Institutes, of which I'm a member of the Institute of Management Consultants, or IMC USA, has really recognized me as a thought leader in this emerging discipline and asked me to really spearhead the development and maturation of this new specialization within management consulting. So to draw that correlation to B Corp, IMC and B Lab are both standards organizations. Impact consulting has several components associated with it. So there's credentialing. So I'm a certified management consultant. I'm also a project management professional, and both credentials have competency frameworks associated with them that require UN Sustainable Development Goal advocacy and implementation, both within my own practice as well as within my clients' practices. So to draw that correlation here, we've got the credentialing by certification with third-party verification and recertification. So CMC, PMP, B Corp. Secondly, there's a code of ethics and a code of conduct, and then the certifying of individual competency versus certifying business model competency.
Okay, thank you for that. And tell us a little bit about Piercing Sun Consulting and its mission.
Sure, absolutely. Our mission at Piercing Sun Consulting is to accelerate companies, especially those who are committed to increasing equity and inclusion, strengthening their governance, improving their communities, and protecting the environment toward reaching their vision. So we really aspire to be a leader in mobilizing business as a force for good by supporting them.
Okay. And who is your ideal client?
Startups, specifically those that are at the Series A or Series B funding stage, which is prior to that initial public offering. So, Michael, we see these companies as really the hope of our future. They can bring about the radical change the world needs in business toward ethical business practices and a more conscious economy.
Okay. And what's in it for these two stages of startups, B Corp, self-certification?
So, yeah, sure. So I'll touch on 5. There's many more than
Can you
that.
touch on them super quick?
Absolutely. So number 1, preparing for growth. Number 2, alignment with values. 3, differentiation and value, brand value, access to capital, and attracting talent.
Okay, thank you for that, Dawn. Now Nada and Tracy are going to be having a brief chat. I'm going to go off piste for 5 minutes or so, as is Dawn. And I'll leave you in the capable hands of Tracy and Nada, and I will see you in 7 minutes' time.
Thanks, Michael. I think full disclosure, first of all, that Willful Group actually works with Future Business Partnership. I think it's important to be quite clear about that. So very proud to have Tracy and her business partner Vish and the rest of their team as clients, helping them announce this wonderful certification score. And I just wanted to just kind of tease out some of the nuance, Tracy, around the business model, because it's super fascinating. I mean, I've been in and around private equity for about 20 years, and what you're doing is really trailblazing. And so I just wanted you to talk a little bit more, if you don't mind, about where the idea came from, where the inspiration came from to do this, because, you know, linking 100% of your carry is a big deal. And, you know, not everybody might appreciate that who's watching, because I think unless you've been up close and personal with private equity, you wouldn't necessarily understand how fundamentally different that is. So can you talk about the inspiration and then how you came to that realization that that's what you wanted to do?
Yeah, no, great. No, it's an absolute pleasure, and thanks. When we hear words like pioneer and trailblaze, we feel very proud because we had to create something from a blank sheet of paper because we really had a very clear view that of what our business needed to achieve and the example that it needed to set, and frankly we needed to build something that didn't exist. So it's thank you for that recognition, and Nada, it's a pleasure that you sit alongside us and get to know our business and help us with all these great announcements that recognize really that we are different on purpose. So maybe I roll back to really the beginning, and there's no coincidence that Vish, my partners, had just had his son when he stepped out of sort of traditional private equity, and I did so the same, and not with a new child, but very much for the same reason, which was we are building great big successful stories in private equity in our sector, but we really are compounding the problem that our sector creates downstream and upstream in terms of being irresponsible, not really having an eye or a conscience about the impact of just on the planet and people of financial success, and so very much wanting to enable businesses that were providing a solution. It's intuitive that these will be the winners of tomorrow. So that's a financial logic or compelling investment strategy in itself. But very deep personal commitment to be an agent for change is what brought us together and what was really the beginning of our business. And I mentioned it in passing, but it really is really fundamental. The ethical consumer or the ethical consumer sector is the sector that we want to address. It's not well served by traditional private equity, and I mentioned them before. The ethical champions like Patagonia, Ben and Jerry's, billion-dollar businesses, B Corps, profitable, growing, taking market share. They've proven the model, but none of them have touched PE, and there's a reason for this. The short-term sort of financial gain at any cost approach of traditional private equity was simply not aligned with an ethical mindset. Simply not aligned, not trusted. So for us to meet our objective, which is to really be an agent for change, to enable businesses that are driving change, and to be eligible, to have permission as to be their investor of choice for these really very authentically mission-driven businesses, we had to be recognizable by them. So, we, I don't know if you've ever read that book by Yvon Chouinard, who is the founder of Patagonia, but Let My People Go Surfing. That is a blueprint on how to build an ethical business. We wanted to build at our core an ethical business. B Corp methodology, that is a great playbook for embedding impact in every aspect of your business. We referred to both, and that's what we decided to do. We decided to build an ethical business, and that's really why B Corp is so fundamental to how we differentiate. And whilst we are proud of any business, even businesses we compete with that are B Corps, we hope that our score 174 really demonstrates that we mean business. We tie all of our incentives to that scorecard. We make businesses and entrench it in the way that businesses can continue to drive value, and that's important.
One thing that I'm just sorry to interrupt you, but I'm conscious that Michael will be chomping away at the time that we've got left, and I think this is a really important point, because I think it comes up again and again, especially in this kind of wrapper of wokeness again, which I really want to try and beat down firmly in this conversation if we can. And I think one of the things that I've heard you talk about, which I think is super relevant, is we can all be slightly hypocritical, I think, sometimes about wanting to be greener, but sometimes if there's if things are more expensive, if they take more time, if it's harder as a consumer to make the right choice, then it's kind of easy to stick with the status quo and not do the right thing. And I think part of your investment thesis, which I think you should just kind of very briefly just explain, is to find those brands and those entrepreneurs and those founders who are hitting that head on. So do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. I mean, this subsegment of eco-consumption is so these businesses, even in tough consumer markets, are growing, and they are there. They are hitting a consumer need, which is provided the efficacy is there, and provided the customer service proposition is there, consumers are voting with their wallets in favor of eco-friendly choices. They're conscious that they can make a difference through their purchasing habits, and this is this permanent structural trend shift in consumption towards eco-friendly alternatives. This is a mega trend. It's permanent. It's inevitable. It is going to be unrelenting for decades, and this is being caused by a pull of an informational shift in consumer education, but also will be through the push, which will be underpinned by regulation in due course. So there is a change in consumer habits that we will be harnessing as part of our investment structure, our investment thesis, and our business model. These businesses should continue to take share and be the winners of tomorrow, because they are providing solutions that their more sort of traditional competitors are not. So that is where we see most fundamentally that profit is going to be driving. Purpose is going to be driving profit, and that this is the right part of the market to be in.
And my final question really is just about amongst all of this discussion of B Corp, and it does take some time, to bake it into the DNA of your business. But are there other benefits that flow other than from your direct kind of investing to you as a business, as Future Business Partnership?
Yeah, I think absolutely, and I think Dawn mentioned it earlier, and I sort of referred to it in passing. It really goes to talent. We are able to, by virtue of our strategy, able to punch way above our weight in terms of the talent that we can bring into our businesses, the talent that we can put around our business to really lean in and drive change. I think there are people who are really experienced, or at that stage of their career, maybe stepping out and becoming plural into non-executive roles, who really want to give back. They want to build a portfolio of businesses where they're making a difference, and where their expertise can really help impactful businesses scale. It's exactly what we're doing, and we're able to bring that talent into businesses that just really could never attract them without that very valuable aspect. So talent goes to the core of value creation, we think, and a mission-driven business. And our business, being a mission-driven business, is able to really attract talent, certainly at a level I've never seen in my previous career. So really exciting, extra and very valuable aspect of being a mission-driven business and backing mission-driven businesses.
Thank you. I think Michael's back on screen, so that probably means he wants us to stop.
Thank you. I am indeed. Thank you very much for that, Nadia and Tracy. I'm going to be a bit mean now. I've got a question for each of you, but I'm going to ask you to try and answer your question in a minute. So, I got one for you first, Dawn, which is revised certification methodology that's coming in this year. Why is it a good thing? So talk about what is this revised certification and why is it a good thing? 60 seconds from now.
Oh my goodness. All right, here I go. So the new methodology will replace the historic flexible approach linked to achieving an 80-point score in the B impact assessment across the range of criteria. Really, the standards are still in early version, but in the draft, the new standards, B Lab emphasizes and further develops 10 topics already featured in the existing standards that are universally applicable and relevant towards achieving an inclusive, equitable, and regenerative economy. So the new standards will define a set of non-negotiable requirements for achieving certification. So to certify in the future, B Corps will need to meet specific performance requirements contextualized to their business characteristics in 10 categories that define leadership on social governance and environmental impact.
Okay, thank you for that, Dawn. And now, Tracy, I've got a minute for you as well. You made it in 60 seconds. Yeah. Well done, Dawn. The problem that faces a lot of B Corps once the excitement of certification dies down, how to get everyone in the business engaged in the movement. Tracy, and there's a guillotine here and it's going to come down. Okay, right. So, I mean, I think, essentially in the B Corp certification, making sure that you've got the buy-in for your whole organization, getting people involved in that process is really important. So buy-in from the beginning is super important. Second, sustainability plans, it's like a business plan. Everyone has their area of responsibility, and holding and getting people involved to deliver against those targets, again, helps to get people really involved at every stage, and then embedding that in incentive schemes, whether it be bonuses, long-term incentive schemes, share of equity, impact targets should be very much part of that, and part of that for everyone in the organization from top to bottom. Okay, thank you for that, Tracy. And Nada, finally, but by no means least, does the rapid growth of the movement diminish its appeal for the most innovative, sustainable trailblazers?
Yeah, that's a really interesting one because it is growing exponentially and globally in places that, Africa is a huge kind of growth market for the B Corp movement, for example. Does it deter the most sustainable, the most innovative? I would say absolutely not. Tracy and Vish and her, their team are an example of that. But I think, how many other truly global movements are there, that are certified at the company level, where, you can't game the scores? Because I think the world is full of people making claims about themselves. And this is something which is, kind of truly robust. So I think to be able to be, to have the due diligence done by, an outside organization that is global and is respected is a great thing for any trailblazer. So I would say no.
All right, thanks for that, Nadia. We're just about to end now. I just wanted to say thanks to a couple of comments we've had in recently. Very interested from Anna here, who was telling us how in the US, wokeness was blamed for the Poing failures. The opposite of our discussion earlier. And also, Cosmo, B Corp is one of the first tools I've experienced as an entrepreneur that efficiently equips founders with the means to protect the culture and vision as the business scales. So there you go. That's really interesting, I think. Thank you ever so much, everybody, today. Thank you to our guests, Tracy, Nada, and Dawn. See you all again soon. Won't be a show next week, but it will be the week after. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Bye. Thanks, Dawn.